I'm probably more likely to grandstand when I am angry. If I see something that ticks me off, I'm probably more likely to engage in grandstanding because I've been morally threatened. I feel like my values are at stake, that like the future of the country hangs on whether someone responds to this tweet that I don't like. And so one thing we encourage people to do is if they feel resentment or indignation well up while they're engaging in public discourse, to walk away.
This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. I explore the questions people think but don't ask out loud, either because they're taboo or thanks to cultural hypnosis. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around.
Hey there, Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert fans. It's Anastasia from Passion and Potential Podcast. I help creatives dig deep into their passions and embrace their full potential to turn their hobbies into dream careers. If you like inspiring stories that make you laugh, cry, and feel empowered, go check out episodes 50 through 53 of my show. You'll hear my journey of overcoming trauma, opening a business, calling off a wedding as a wedding photographer, and finding my truest, most authentic me in life. You're listening to Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert. Here's your host, Meredith.
Hey, Curiositors, it's me, Meredith. I am not what you call an early adapter. I didn't get Facebook until 2008, and I didn't share a status for over a year. Even with being that late to the game, it wasn't hard to notice the change in Facebook from then to now. Social media overall has become a more hostile place to hang out. And while I treasure the way it helps me learn about the world and social justice-related issues, I've often wondered things like, does posting a black square really do any good for Black Americans? Does wearing a pink tutu and posting a temporary profile pic do anything to prevent breast cancer? And I don't need to state the obvious negative impact that digital arguments have had in real life. It makes you wonder how much of this sort of thing is just virtue signaling. So if you've ever wondered why people do this and how you can keep yourself from slipping into this episode is for you. Giant thank you to my returning listeners, by the way. It's people like you who make the internet an awesome place. If you haven't listened to the show on the Good Pods app yet, find me there because you can rate and review individual episodes and even see what podcast episodes I'm listening to. And if you're new here, welcome. I started this podcast to inspire people to choose curiosity over judgment. There's no specific order to listen to episodes, and at the end of each episode, I give a sneak peek for next week and offer a next episode suggestion. So have a look around and hit play on whatever grabs your attention. All right, enjoy the show. We've all seen it. Some of us even took social media hiatuses because of it. Others were uninvited to family gatherings. What am I talking about? Virtue signaling and its divisive aftermath. Before the term virtue signaling came on the scene in 2015, this one-upmanship and vilifying those with opposing views was actually called grandstanding, and it could be found primarily in political arenas. Now, even though almost no one likes the way politicians behave, grandstanding is an everyday occurrence on social media where, as my guest states, it's easier than ever to find an audience for demonstrations of what a good person you are. And I would like to make a little side note for terminology clarification. While most of us think of virtue signaling as an overt message of moral showboating, signaling virtues isn't always a bad thing, but moral grandstanding kind of is. So while most of us have moral grandstanding in mind when we say virtue signaling, for the purpose of today's conversation, we'll stick to the term grandstanding. My next guest is an associate professor and philosopher at Bowling Green University and the co-author of the book Grandstanding, The Use and Abuse of Moral Talk. Today, he's going to help describe the spectrum of grandstanding and its motivators and what we can do to cancel ourselves. Not really, but kinda. Pioneer philosopher, ardent thought leader, lover of a good brainstorm sesh over nachos, Dr. Brandon Warmke. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me, Meredith. My nacho fame has, you've done your research.
Yes. Yeah. I, inquiring minds would like to know how your book was born over a mutual disgust of the state of social media and a good plate of nachos. Would you like to share with the class?
Sure. So the year was about 2014, and I and my friend and co-author Justin Tosi, who's also a philosopher, we were graduate students, PhD students at the University of Arizona, which is in Tucson, which has some of the best Mexican food in the U.S. And we noticed at that time, on Facebook in particular, that a lot of people started using moral and political discourse in what appeared to us to be sort of new in different ways. It was almost like they were issuing press releases. I stand for, right. I believe in. They're like corporations, like issuing these statements about what they love and what they care for and what disgusts them and what they're against. And at the time, as you pointed out, the only term for this, it's sort of hard to remember a world before the term virtue signaling, but the only term for this was in the public domain was what people call grandstanding or moral grandstanding. And so we set out to sort of figure out, pull back the curtain on a lot of discourse, because it seemed to us that a lot of people were using moral and political statements to improve their brand, to show off how good they are, to try to get people to think that they care deeply about this or that they're highly morally sensitive, that they're enlightened. And so that set off this long project of writing the book, and then also doing some empirical work with some psychologists to try to figure out what's going on when people grandstand.
And in your book, in chapter 3, you talk about the different flavors, if you will, of grandstanding. Can you go through those? Sure.
So fundamentally, grandstanding is just the use of moral talk for self-promotion. That's the bumper sticker description. It's saying something on social media or cable news, primarily because you want to impress people. And if you think about why people do this, it's in a way not mysterious. There are lots of basic human drives. We all want food and shelter, community. We want to be liked. There's sexual drives, there's drives to satisfy our fear of loneliness. But one of the basic fundamental human drives is for status. We want to be liked, we want to be welcomed, we want to be thought well of. And psychologists talk about this thing called prestige status. So prestige status is something you can get when people think well of you, they like you, they look up to you, they defer to you in various ways. Our ancestors on the savannah could have gotten prestige status for knowing how to kill, a gazelle, or knowing where to find the water. And now you can get prestige status for being, a world-class tennis player, or being a good singer, solving mathematical equations, sending man to the moon. But it also turns out you can get prestige status for looking like a moral person. People will defer to you, look up to you if they think, that you have these really impressive moral qualities. So in the book, we talk about different ways that grandstanding is manifest, and we talk about 5 of them. These aren't the only ways. It's just the ways that seem pretty common to us. And they should be familiar to your listeners. I mean, I think everyone who spent like 5 minutes on social media has probably seen all of these, probably today.
Yeah,
since
probably before lunch, really.
Yeah, they scrolled Twitter for 10 minutes and they've probably seen lots of these.
Exactly.
Or at least they've seen things that look like these things. Okay, so the first one is piling on. This is pretty self-explanatory. Piling on is what happens when you... usually this happens negatively. Someone says something you don't like and you pile on, which means you join hundreds or thousands or maybe even millions of other people in expressing your indignation, your outrage, your disapproval, not so much because you think this person deserves the total aggregation of thousands of people's of condemnation, condemning them in public, wishing death upon them. It's not because you want, justice to be served. It's because you want to be seen piling on, right? You want to be seen, enforcing these moral standards. It allows you to be on your side, we're the vanguards of morality and justice, and those are the bad people. And so
like the right side of history kind of thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So a lot of people who pile on, they want to be seen as joining in on the fun of moral condemnation, being on the right side of history.
The fun of moral condemnation. We just said that.
Yeah.
That was just said.
Well,
and you're not wrong.
Well, it's interesting. It actually does feel good. Nietzsche pointed this out famously in recent psychological work. I mean, one reason people express moral outrage is because it's pleasurable. It feels good. You get a rush from it. And so there's all kinds of perverse incentives, obviously, when something like moral anger feels good. So one form of grandstanding is piling on. Another was what we call ramping up. So ramping up happens when people turn moral discourse into a kind of moral arms race. So Meredith, you might say something like, "Oh, the senator's behavior is disgusting. She should apologize." And I say, "Meredith, how dare you? If you really cared about about justice or about the poor, you would demand that she resign and never vote for her again, right?" And then someone else shows up and says, "I have never seen such a disgusting display of xenophobia. You're basically supporting Hitler," and so there's a kind of one-upsmanship that moral discourse can take. And why does this happen? Well, each of us thinks that we sort of inhabit a pecking order, and in the moral sort of community, I think I really care about justice. You might think that you really care about justice. And so every time you issue some moral statement, I have to either let you take pride of place, or I have to outdo you. And so and you have a lot of people behaving this way, trying to outdo each other with who's the most pure, who hates Trump the most, who loves Trump the most. And so you get these polarizing dynamics of pushing people to extremes because people are simply trying to outdo each other with their moral bona fides. And we can talk about that later when it comes to polarization and some of the bad parts of grandstanding. So there's this ramping up. There's also what we call, so we called this trumping up in the book, and right. It's probably a bad name in retrospect, but the idea is a kind of excessive sensitivity to morality. So the idea of the person who's trumping up, they're trumping up charges. So, what falls below the moral radar of the hoi polloi doesn't fall below the ever vigilant moral eye of me. I'm always out trying to find the violations of justice. So as I sit today, I just saw on Twitter, one of the big things right now is what's called digital blackface. So are white people allowed to post GIFs of Black people? So, if I post a GIF of like Michael Jordan, hitting a three and shrugging, right? Am I doing something morally egregious there? And so one of the features of trumping up is it ends up turning morality into a kind of entrepreneurship. So who can find the next moral injustice? Who can find the next thing to harp on? It's a kind of Princess and the Pea situation. So you have, this Hans Christian Andersen fable with a princess who can feel, a tiny pea under 20 mattresses. That's the idea of the trumper up, right? You all can't even imagine what it's like to have my moral compass. And so I'm going to point out all the things that are wrong.
Right.
So then we have the fourth one is what we call excessive emotions or excessive outrage. So this is obviously going to be common. One way to show that you're morally enlightened or that you care about something is to get upset about it. And this is a reliable signal. I mean, we know from lots of work in psychology that if you express moral outrage about something, people will see you as having strong moral convictions. And so this is a rational, strategic way. If you wanted to go about impressing people, just be angry at a lot of stuff all the time, because it just looks like you care more. And so often it ends up being outrage that's used, but sometimes it's disappointment or sadness. Sometimes it's positive emotion. So someone might say, Meredith, I have never seen a more brave and selfless act as you just did. You are amazing. You're a paragon of the feminist movement, right? Or whatever it is. It could be some really silly minor thing, but I could have these excessive emotions because I want to be seen as recognizing this thing. So that's excessive emotions or excessive outrage. And the fifth way that grandstanding often gets exemplified in discourse is what we call dismissiveness. So dismissiveness is basically if you can't see that this is wrong, if you can't see that this is fascism, if you can't see that this is racism or whatever it is, then I'm not speaking with you. We're done, right? Sit down, shut up. I'm not having this conversation. And so a lot of grandstanding takes this form, and it's a pretty obvious why, right? If I don't think, I want people to think that I am so far above you that even having this conversation is beneath me. You are beneath contempt. I am so much more morally superior than you. Go do your homework, go read a book, then come back and we can talk. And I might consider having a conversation with you. So those are the 5 ways that people tend to exhibit their grandstanding. And it turns out, I think all of them are actually pretty bad. They all have pretty bad consequences for public discourse, with very few, if any, redeeming features, except maybe the venting of our spleens.
Right. Well, yeah, there's that. I have so many thoughts about this. And I think my first question is, all of those examples were social media driven, obviously, because as I quoted you in the intro, social media is an easy audience to show how good of a person that you are. And we are speaking to motivation. We're not necessarily speaking to, moral talk is important for society, as you point out in your book, but this is like, obviously, the showman's version of it, the theater aspect of it. So prior to social media, do you think this was not as severe? Has social media spun it off into its own thing? Is there hope for humanity? I mean, this is kind of like a dismal downward spiral, and it's easy for anyone to go there. So I'm wondering if social media, how bad has social media made this?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer. I think on the one hand, grandstanding is not new. If you went back to the Greek agora, you'd find politicians grandstanding. What has changed is not human motivation. Humans, for as long as we've been in societies, have probably been status seekers. It's been important. It's important to have status. And as you rightly note, moral talk is very important. We don't object to moral conversations. What we object to is people using these moral conversations for self-promotion. They distort and perverse a very important thing, a very protective instrument, morality, and they use it for self-interested reasons. So I don't think that grandstanding itself is new. I think what is new is that virtually everyone can pick up one of these things, their phone, and within 10 seconds have dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions of people listening or reading what they say. And there are billions of people across the planet who have that same platform. And so, as recent as 50 years ago, if you wanted to have a platform to preen or to grandstand, you had to be a journalist or a politician or maybe a religious leader, or you had to literally stay on the street corner and try to get people's attention. Your average person just wouldn't be able to reach hundreds or thousands or millions of people. That has all changed. And so I think what's not changed is our motivation or our predilection to grandstand. What I think has changed is we've all been given a platform to allow ourselves to indulge these desires. And we've all discovered, because we see it before our very eyes, we see that grandstanding can work, right? It is a way to get status. It's not like grandstanders, we all recognize what they're doing and we say, oh, how horrible. It's actually very hard to tell whether someone's grandstanding. But we see that this is how people get followers on Twitter. It's how people get elected, is by playing into our desires to want to support, vote for people who share our moral values. And so there are these perverse incentives. And so I am a little pessimistic about public discourse improving so long as people continue to use social media to try to impress other people, and not for other reasons, like trying to find the truth out, or trying to be silent and maybe withhold judgment. And so, I actually, in the book, we close the book with a kind of quasi-optimistic take that norms can change, people can change. And we give some tips for sort of trying to solve this problem in our own lives at the end of the book. But this is a massive problem. It's, it'd be one thing if it was just 10 or 20 people around the world who were grandstanding, but it's, it's all of us, myself included.
Right. So basically, if I'm to summarize what you're saying, human behavior hasn't changed, but we have less of a filter now. And so there's less friction between what we think and how we proclaim it. And so it requires a higher degree of emotional intelligence, which we are lacking.
I would say that the human motivation's not changed, but we have this new technology and we've not figured out how to use it. It takes humans a long time to figure out how to solve problems. It took, 80 years for people to figure out to put wheels on suitcases. That took forever for humans to figure out. Like, of course, it's obvious to put wheels on suitcases, but people didn't have wheels on suitcases for decades. And so you might think we are very early in the process of learning how to use social media. And it might take decades, if we're all here in decades, if social media exists in decades, it might take decades to figure out what the norms are and to sort of collaborate. I think that's the best case scenario, is that we are able to coordinate and see what the proper uses are of social media etiquette, rules develop, and so on. The more pessimistic take is that humans just aren't capable of that on that scale.
We're all assholes. That's the pessimistic take. We all can be assholes. Right. And we'll get to that in a minute and talk about some ways that we can filter ourselves. Because the point of this conversation that we're having is not to go, that lady or that guy, my Uncle Joe, he's always posting. It's to learn how to filter ourselves and regulate ourselves. Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. If trash TV leaves you feeling drained and you want to support creators like yours truly, check out StreamMoko. You can search shows by your mood and even, watch my show, The Curious Introvert. For every $3.99 subscription, they give away $1 for good and support their creators, like your girl. Find my affiliate link in the episode description or the bio link in my Instagram account. StreamMoko, the streaming network that gives a damn. Listen, if the last 2 years have given you a chronic eye twitch, you should consider trying medical marijuana. I highly recommend it. See what I did there? There's lots of ways for it to help you, so if you have questions and if you're the least bit curious, Google Empathic Practice Pensacola. It's the most non-intimidating way to get your medical card in Florida. Their in-house doctor and holistic support make them the easy choice. empathicpractice.us. If you've got backyard barbecue plans for 2022, but mosquitoes are not invited, I recommend Insect. I've been using their pest control service for several years now. They have a certified mosquito identification specialist on staff, and pollinator care is always top of mind. If you live in the Florida Panhandle or the Gulf Coast of Alabama, give them a call, ensec.net. The UWF Historic Trust. We shoot the show at the Pensacola Museum of History. It not only houses exhibits of lesser-known Pensacola history, it's an event space too. So if you need a unique space in downtown Pensacola for a fundraiser, networking event, or a corporate party, take a look at historicpensacola.org. And if you want to tour one of the 12 museums, get your tickets in person so you can show the agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. Get emails by texting REAL to 66866. Now back to the show. When I was reading the book about some of the characteristics of chronic grandstanders, I couldn't help but read narcissism. Is there a psychological correlation between chronic grandstanders and diagnosable narcissism?
There is. You are correct. So we've done over the years with a psychologist, Josh Grubbs, who by the way you should probably have on your show. He researches pornography, sex, and narcissism.
Yeah, that's right up my alley, actually.
If you can't have a fun conversation with Josh for 30 minutes, Josh, I'm sorry if you eventually listen to this, I put you on the hook here.
It's all his fault. Yep.
So over the years, we've done about 7 studies with about 6,000 participants, including some longitudinal stuff. And it turns out, if you're trying to figure out who's grandstanding, it's not a left-right thing. People on the left tend to be inclined to grandstand just as much as people on the right. However, people at the far ends of the spectrum, the political spectrum, do grandstand more. So it tends to be, it looks like a U curve. So if you were to graph it out, so centrists, moderates, probably not grandstanding a whole lot, but the farther you go out to the edges, you'll find more grandstanders. That's actually part of our evidence for thinking that grandstanding itself actually pushes people to the edge because of this ramping up effect, this polarization that happens.
And we continue to do it because you said it feels good, like it's releasing some kind of chemical in the brain, I guess. Is it like a dopamine thing? Yeah.
So some of the anger that people express is because it feels good. Some people express anger to show off, to grandstand. Some people express anger, we know from some studies, to relieve guilt. So they themselves feel some guilt about some moral transgression, and so they express anger to sort of relieve guilt about it. But yeah, narcissists, as it turns out, one of the best predictors, again, this is probably no surprise, one of the best predictors of whether you grandstand is how much of a narcissist are you. And one kind of narcissism is called narcissistic extroversion. And these are people who like to be out in front on stage. Look at me, look how great I am. They're probably influencers, right? They're politicians. They're always trying to get attention. And so narcissistic extroverts, if you know that you're a narcissistic extrovert, and it's actually quite easy to figure out whether it is, if someone is, you just ask them. Most narcissists will tell you they're narcissists.
Oh, interesting.
As it turns out. Yeah.
I'll have to try that out. Fun weekend project.
Right. Your friends, the bar.
Hey guys, it's a great way to get your drinks not paid for.
That's right. So yeah, so these people, they're narcissists about everything, not just morality. So they'll use, their intellect, their sports prowess, their lifts, their lift at the gym that morning. They'll use everything, and it turns out they often use morality too. Morality is one more avenue to get status. And so there is this connection between narcissistic extroverts and grandstanding. There's also a connection, although a much weaker one, between what psychologists call narcissistic antagonists. So narcissistic antagonists try to get status by pushing other people down. They dominate, they shame, whereas narcissistic extroverts try to lift themselves up. Look at me, look at what I'm doing. Narcissistic antagonists, to the extent that they use grandstanding to do this, they're shaming, they're being cruel, they're gaining status for themselves by pushing other people down.
Interesting.
But of course, like, you don't have to be a narcissist to grandstand, and in fact, most people who are probably grandstanding are not narcissists.
Right.
We all are self-interested. We all want status. It's just that it's very likely that you're a grandstander if you're involved in politics and if you're a narcissist.
Oh, the trail we could go off there, but I'm not. I'm going to stay right on topic.
But I repeat myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so confabulation, great word. I was really hoping it was like a compliment, like, girl, you're so confabulous. I was very disappointed to find out it's true.
She had me all confabulated.
Right.
Sorry.
Not a good.
My mom is watching this.
So yeah, I was disappointed to find out that it partially means that you're not aware of your own motivations, which is tragic on so many levels, right? Because it is true. So if we are not aware of the entirety of our motivations, how can we best filter ourselves to not grandstand, but still have good moral discourse, and have good conversations that are deep and meaningful, but without grandstanding?
This is a difficult question. Yeah. So confabulation, what psychologists have basically found out over the recent decades is we are often mysterious to ourselves. We often don't know why we're doing what we're doing. The stories that we tell ourselves sometimes are accurate about why we do things, but oftentimes they're self-serving. We are often self-deceived about why we're doing what we're doing. So if you ask most grandstanders, why are you saying these things? Very few will say, even if it's true, very few will admit, I'm doing this because I want to look good. And yet we know people do this because they want to impress others. They'll say, oh, I'm standing up for the oppressed, or, I care about the border, or it's important to state the truth, or, whatever. They'll confabulate some other rationale for what they're doing. And so this is depressing because it, as you rightly point out, it makes it really difficult to not only just assess other people. I mean, forget other people. I mean, they're even more mysterious to us. And it's hard to know whether someone's grandstanding, even if it looks like it. We're even mysterious to ourselves. I mean, I tell myself stories all the time about why I'm doing things. And Lord knows if I'm right or wrong, like going to the gym to be healthy, or is it some other more self-interested reason? So what grandstanders are doing is they're engaging in moral talk for self-promotion. So one thing I could do if I wanted to try to have more productive contributions to discourse, if I want to make sure I'm not just tossing toxic waste into the reservoir of public discourse, one trick that we encourage people to do is to simply ask themselves, whenever they're on Facebook or Twitter, if we could give this book to every talking head on cable news, every politician, is to ask yourself, am I doing this to do good, or am I saying this to look good? Am I saying this because I actually think, I really in my heart of hearts think this is going to help. This is going to help discourse. It's going to clarify. It's going to explain. It's going to point towards the truth. It's going to give evidence. Am I saying this because I think it's going to serve those positive purposes? Or am I saying this primarily because I think I want likes, or I want people to look up to me, or I want people to think that I'm the vanguard of morality, or I want people to think that no one hates that bigot more than I do? And I think that question, am I saying this to do good, or am I saying this to look good? It's not foolproof. But I think it can catch, and I confess, I catch myself tweeting things after the fact, and then I think I'm not sure what was I doing. Was I really doing that because I thought it was going to help, or did I just need to sort of like let off some steam about these people that I don't like?
Right.
And so that is one way to have a more productive conversation, and I think the result will be a lot of us saying less. But I actually think that's good. I actually think that for lots of reasons, we should probably be less involved in politics and spend more time. You live in Florida, surfing, or crabbing, or playing with someone's kids, being a big brother or big sister to a child, volunteering. I think these are things that are typically more useful of our time and will have a better impact on the world than like arguing on Twitter for 6 hours a day about whether it's okay to post a GIF of Michael Jordan. So that's one thing that we encourage. The other thing is to monitor our emotions. So I'm probably more likely to grandstand when I am angry. If I see something that ticks me off, I'm probably more likely to engage in grandstanding because I've been morally threatened. I feel like my values are at stake, that like the future of the country hangs on whether someone responds to this tweet that I don't like. And so one thing we encourage people to do is if they feel resentment or indignation well up while they're engaging in public discourse, to walk away. Like open a tab and start Netflix, go for a walk, go make a cup of coffee, go pick up a book, just do something else. And if you come back and decide this is still important, to say, okay, but you've at least given yourself a chance to recognize that maybe my motivations in this particular instance are not serving the public's interest, that everyone has an interest in the quality and health of our public discourse. And I have a responsibility to not be dumping toxic waste. And so those two things, asking ourselves these questions, am I doing this to look good or do good? And not trying to engage in discourse only or primarily when I'm angry. I think those two ways, though not foolproof, can at least at the margin sort of shave off some of the more egregious or useless grandstanding that we do.
It's a good start. I would agree. In your book, or maybe it was an interview, you talk about disappointment. Why is disappointment a good litmus test for grandstanding?
Yeah, so we call this the disappointment test. It's, as it turns out, it's very difficult to know whether someone's grandstanding. It might even be difficult to know whether you're grandstanding. And so one of the tests we give is to ask, would I be disappointed upon having said this thing on Twitter or whatever? Would I be disappointed if no one came away thinking of me as morally great or morally impressive? That's a nice test of, as it were, where your heart's at. You might be disappointed if people aren't persuaded by your evidence or persuaded by your argument or are mean to you. You might be disappointed for lots of reasons that are maybe more appropriate to public discourse. But to be disappointed because you've made a point about immigration or Ukraine or whatever it is, to come away disappointed because no one thought better of you, that suggests that we're engaging in discourse for maybe less than optimal reasons. And so again, it's not a foolproof test. It's what psychologists, philosophers call a heuristic. It's a rule of thumb. Would I be disappointed, if imagine crafting some message about how, my college engaged in cultural appropriation because they serve, because they have a Panda Express in the student union. Imagine crafting this message and really, I'm going to get, people are going to love this. And then you post it on Facebook and there's no likes. It's you might be really disappointed. And if you're really disappointed, it might be because no one was persuaded by your moral arguments, but it might also be because no one came away thinking that you have a really sensitive and enlightened moral compass.
So know thyself is definitely up there with the possible solutions. What do you think about teaching public discourse as a public school program, as class that they would take?
That's a good question.
Is that your next project? You're going to create a curriculum?
No. I don't know how much does it pay?
Well, we're talking about public school, so not good. Not good.
Well, I work at a public university, so I know what the pay is. I think it would be good to teach. I can imagine it being good. I don't know if it would be good. I can imagine it being good to teach young people what you might think of as intellectual virtues.
Well, and self-regulation, I think, all the points that you brought up, learning to down-regulate and really that's, executive function. And there's a lot of emotional intelligence wrapped up into discourse and being able to have an exchange with someone else in person or online and have a successful outcome. But I think when you said that, you pointed out that social media is so new that you used the wheels on the suitcase correlation. That's really eye-opening to think about the impact of young people not engaging in as much in-person dialogue when you compared to digital dialogue. Most of their interactions are online and on screens, and there's so much there that we are not sure what the outcomes are, as far as mental development and social impact. So we are kind of like a giant experiment right now. Really, there's no question here. I'm just pontificating.
No, you're right. I mean, we are, it's a bit trite at this point to even say it, but we are in a way conducting a massive longitudinal social experiment on young people and their use of social media. Mm-hmm. And we just have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, I'm 40 years old. I am very thankful, incredibly thankful, and I often feel alien from many young people because I went through high school and college without social media. And I can't imagine what it's like to be 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
And feeling pressured to be on Instagram or TikTok, and feeling like this is life. Like this is the life. Like it's not out there, right? It's not going to the mall, going to the beach, right? That's not life. The life is like, how many followers do you have on TikTok? Like for a lot of people, that is the real life.
Yeah.
And we just have no idea how that's going to affect it. You know, it might be innocuous, or it might be that we're allowing young people to develop very unhealthy dispositions when it comes to social interaction.
I agree. So when you talked about, in your book, you talk about like negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement. And one of the suggestions that you give is to, you know, not, when someone seems to perhaps be grandstanding on social media, certainly calling them out isn't going to be helpful, but ignoring them could be helpful because it's negative reinforcement. I am not going to participate in your circus, sir. But
yeah, that's right.
I don't know, that kind of got me thinking about the positive and negative reinforcement of how we interact in general, digital and in real life. And I would love your thoughts on China's, so what's it called? The social credit system in China. And there's talk that it could come here and how it reinforces, positive and negative behavior. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of grandstanding and how we interact with each other now in the digital age?
So you're right that you're absolutely right that it's a bad idea to go around trying to call people out for grandstanding, because it's hard to know whether they're doing it, and in a way that misses the point of the whole book, which is like to not go around accusing people of things and like trying to impose your morality on them. You're right that there is, however, the sanction that you can put on other people if you suspect they're grandstanding, which is just to ignore them. Because people do respond to incentives, being ignored for lots of grandstanding might disincentivize it. As far as the social credit system, this is not something I'm an expert on or I know much about at all. So I shouldn't say a whole lot. But what I will say is I do think that it's extremely dangerous to have too much of our lives open to the public. And we need significant spheres of our lives where we can mind our own business, and that others need to mind their own, and that my business is not theirs. So think about the home. I mean, the home is a place of refuge. It's a place of relaxation. It's a place where you can do the things that you do with the people that you do them with, outside of the gazing eye of the public. And I think the home provides a model for a way of thinking about much of society that shows a healthy way of thinking about social blame or social morality, is that we all need spheres of our lives that are, as it were, closed off or mostly closed off to others' moral judgments. And that's not to say there are not limits on that, but I would be very hesitant to have a system where people's private lives, their thoughts, their speech is monitored in such a way that there's someone out there, some group out there who are not angels, by the way, assessing whether what I'm doing is a credit to society or a debit to society.
Well said. And I think that's the perfect segue to your next book, which is Why It's Okay to Mind Your Own Business. So as we wrap up, tell people where they can stay in touch with you to learn about this new book's debut and just otherwise interact.
Yes. Well, thank you, Meredith. I appreciate that. And what a fun conversation. Thanks so much. You can find me on Twitter. I'm not a very boring Twitter follow, but it's just my first name and last name. You can find the Grandstanding book on Amazon. It's on Kindle. If you speak Arabic, Portuguese, or Korean, it'll be out in translation soon. And then the next book I'm writing with the same co-author, my friend Justin Tosi. It's called Why It's Okay to Mind Your Own Business. It's basically an anti-commencement speech book. Commencement speakers tell young people they got to get out there and change the world and make a difference and start a revolution. And we argue that you don't need to do that. You can live a noble, worthwhile, honorable life by committing yourself to your town, putting down roots, raising a family, and even living in solitude. So that's the next book. This book has ended up being a monster. I don't know if it's ever going to get done, but that's the tease for it. Anyway.
Well, we'll stay tuned in the meantime. Thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Meredith.
Thanks for listening. If you've loved a couple episodes of this show, help me let others know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or the Good Pods app. And if you liked this episode, you'll also like the one with the social media expert on how to be more human online when you're building a brand. It's episode 54. Stay tuned next week when I talk with a travel writer who learned the whole truth about our national parks and his dad. Talk to you then.